My name is Harold. I'm 88 years old. I suppose that's old enough to stop pretending there's still plenty ahead of me. Old enough to hear the clock in the hallway and know it isn't just measuring the afternoon.
I didn't plan to record this. I don't have anything polished to say. I keep waking up before sunrise lately. And in those quiet minutes before the light reaches the curtains, I find myself thinking the same sentence. I thought there would be more time. It's a small sentence, ordinary, but it has followed me around for years now. I was born in 1937, grew up in a narrow house with thin walls and a coal stove that never quite warmed the back rooms. My father worked long hours. My mother kept her feelings folded neatly inside herself. We were not unkind to each other, just quiet. I learned early that life moved in stages: school, work, marriage, children, retirement. There was always a later to rest, later to fix things, later to say what you meant. That belief carried me. I married Helen when I was 26. She had a way of standing still when she listened to you, as if the world could wait for a sentence to finish. I used to admire that about her. I didn't realize how rare it was. We built a life the way most people do. Small house, 2 children, bills stacked on the kitchen counter, Sunday dinners, arguments that cooled by morning. Nothing dramatic. That's the strange part. The most permanent losses in my life arrived quietly. No storm, no warning siren, just ordinary days. I remember one evening in particular. I had come home late from work. I was tired. There had been a disagreement at the office, something about a contract that fell through. I walked in already carrying the weight of it. Helen was at the table. The children were older by then, mostly out of the house. The room felt larger than it used to. She said, "Can we talk?" I said, "Not tonight." It wasn't cruel, it wasn't shouted, just a sentence dropped between us like a plate set down too hard. She nodded. She always nodded. I told myself we had time. Whatever she wanted to say could wait until the weekend, or the following week, or after things settled down at work. There would be more evenings. There weren't. A few months later, she was diagnosed. It had already spread. The doctors used careful words that felt padded and distant. We sat in the car afterward without turning the engine on. She looked straight ahead and said, "I didn't want to worry you." I reached for her hand then. I remember that clearly. The way her fingers felt thinner than they used to. The treatments went and went. The house grew quieter. Friends stopped visiting as often. Illness makes people uncomfortable. It reminds them of something they would rather not consider. One night, near the end, she asked again, "Can we talk?" I pulled my chair close to the bed. But by then she was too tired for the long conversation she had once tried to begin. She spoke in pieces, about the children, about the garden, about a box in the attic I had never opened. There were things between us that remained unnamed, not dramatic betrayals, not scandals, just years of postponed sentences. After she was gone, I found that box. It was filled with letters she had written to me, but never given. Small reflections, frustrations, hopes she wasn't sure how to say out loud. Nothing accusatory, just her voice on paper, waiting. I sat on the attic floor for a long time.
I thought of that evening at the kitchen table. Not tonight. I thought there would be more time. Life did not end when she died. That surprised me. The sun still rose, the mail still arrived, the grass kept growing. The children called. They had their own lives by then, careers, marriages, cities far from this house. I told them I was fine. It seemed important to be fine. Years passed. They visited when they could, holidays mostly, birthdays when flights were cheap enough. I noticed something I didn't want to admit. I began to treat them the way I had treated Helen, assuming there would be another visit, another conversation, another chance to ask the questions that felt slightly uncomfortable. My son once stood in the doorway before leaving and said, "Dad, we should spend more time together." I said, "We will." I believed it. He moved overseas 2 years later for work. It was a good opportunity. I encouraged him to take it. We spoke on the phone sometimes, but there is a difference between hearing a voice and watching someone's face while they search for words. My daughter drifted more quietly. No argument, no rupture, just less frequent calls, longer pauses between replies. I told myself it was normal. Children build their own worlds. There would be more time. I turned 80, then 85. The body begins to negotiate with you at that age. Stares become suggestions rather than conveniences. Sleep grows lighter. Names slip away and return hours later. And somewhere in those years, I began to understand that later is not a promise. It's an assumption. But by then, most of my life had already been lived inside that assumption. The house is very quiet now. I sit in Helen's old chair sometimes. The fabric is worn at the arms. I haven't replaced it. It feels wrong to remove the shape she left behind. In the evenings, I think about all the small delays, the postponed conversations, the phone calls I meant to return the next day, the invitations I declined because I was tired. None of them felt final at the time. That's the trick of it. Irreversible things rarely announce themselves as such. They arrive dressed as ordinary moments, and I moved through so many of them, believing I could circle back. I thought there would be more time.
There's a park a few blocks from this house. I walk there when my legs cooperate. I sit on the same bench each time. It faces the path where young parents push strollers, where couples argue softly and then fall back into step. I watch them, and I don't feel superior. I don't feel wiser. I just feel aware of how quickly it all passes. When Helen and I were young, the days felt crowded. Work, school events, grocery lists, repairs, deadlines. There was always something immediate pulling at us. I remember once she stood by the sink, staring out the window. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. She said, "Just that one day this will all be over." I laughed. I told her not to be dramatic, but she wasn't being dramatic. She was noticing something I refused to see. Time does not stretch because we are busy. It contracts. The children grew without asking permission. Their voices deepened. Their interests changed. And I was often half present, already thinking about the next responsibility. I told myself I was doing it for them, working late, saving money, planning ahead. There would be time later to sit longer at the dinner table, time later to ask deeper questions. I remember the last full family dinner before Helen got sick.
We were all there. Laughter, plates clattering. Someone spilled a drink, and we all groaned. I left the table early to answer a call from work. I can't even remember what that call was about now, but I remember the look on Helen's face when I walked back in. Not anger, just a kind of distance. I thought there would be another dinner just like it. There wasn't. After she passed, I tried to fill the house with noise, the television on all day, the radio humming in the kitchen. Silence felt accusatory. It forced me to sit with the things I hadn't said. There are sentences that live inside me still, simple ones. I'm afraid too. I don't know what I'm doing. I need you. They would have changed the texture of our life, I think. Not dramatically, just enough. But I saved them for later. I have a drawer in my bedroom with old photographs, black and white ones from when we were young, color prints from birthdays and vacations. In most of them, I am looking slightly away from the camera, distracted, mid-thought. Helen is looking straight ahead. I used to think that meant I was focused, driven, responsible. Now it feels like absence. My son calls less these days. He has his own children. They are growing up in a language that is not mine. I see their faces through a screen. They wave. I wave back. I don't blame him. Life carries people forward. But sometimes, after the call ends, I sit in the quiet room and realize how much of our relationship was built on the assumption that we could always catch up later. There would be more summers, more visits, more long talks when things settled down. The body doesn't consult your plans. Last winter, I fell in the kitchen. Nothing dramatic, just a moment of dizziness. I lay on the tile floor longer than I care to admit before I managed to pull myself up. For the first time, I felt the edge of it. Not death exactly, just the narrowing of possibilities. I stood there holding the counter and understood that there may not be another holiday with everyone gathered. There may not be another chance to finish certain conversations. And what struck me was not panic, it was recognition. This is what Helen was trying to tell me in her quiet way. This is what she saw when she stared out the window all those years ago. Not doom, just the truth that time does not owe us completion. I thought there would be more time to soften, more time to listen without rushing, more time to sit beside the people I loved without checking the clock in my head. At 88, the clock is no longer subtle. It ticks loudly in the early morning. I don't regret my entire life. That would be dishonest. There were good years, tender moments, laughter that filled rooms. But woven through all of it was a quiet postponement. I postponed vulnerability. I postponed presence. I postponed saying things plainly, because I believed there would be another opportunity. If you are listening to this, I'm not asking you to change anything. I'm not offering lessons. I don't feel qualified for that. I'm just telling you what it feels like to sit in a nearly empty house at 88 and realize that most of life is made of moments that never announce themselves as the last. The last dinner, the last long conversation, the last time someone stands in a doorway and waits for you to look up. You don't recognize them as endings. You treat them as pauses. I did. And now, when I sit in Helen's chair and the evening light fades across the floor, I understand something I was too busy to see. Time was never guaranteed to stretch for me. It was simply moving, and I kept assuming it would slow down when I was ready. I wasn't ready. I thought there would be more time. If this story stays with you for a while, that's enough. You don't have to say anything. You can just sit with it. I'm going to sit here a little longer myself.